Good evening. Welcome to WSBI, your resource for success podcast program, where you get to meet inspiring women-owned businesses from across the country. And now, for your host, Kimberly McLemore.
All right, good evening and welcome to WSBI, your resource for success podcast, where you get to meet inspiring entrepreneurs and women-owned businesses from across the country. I am your host, Kimberly McLemore, and welcome to another night of sharing. With us, we have Michelle Vandepas, author, TEDx Speaker and Visibility Coach, and co-founder of GracePoint Publishing. Michelle is the nation's leading expert for entrepreneurs and personal development experts who want to share what they've learned with the world by becoming an author. She is the co-founder of GracePoint Matrix Publishing, the gold standard in concierge publishing. As a book coach and publisher, Michelle has worked with thousands of authors over the past 20 years to publish and promote their books and their work. As a serial entrepreneur and serial best-selling author herself, she understands the strategy, messaging, and creative juice needed to build a platform. She is a visionary marketer who combines creativity with smart business sense to unleash the power of her clients. Michelle has been featured in numerous media outlets speaking about her passion for purpose and profit. So without further ado, please help me welcome to my platform, Michelle Vandepas. Hey, Michelle, how are you?
Oh, that's so great. Thank you so much for that wonderful intro.
Well, you're welcome. I mean, I have a wonderful person on the other end, so we got to make sure that, you get all the greatness that you deserve to have, and I get to share with the listeners. So I'm excited to have you on this evening. So how have you been?
I am well, thank you. I'm holding up in the middle of this craziness. Yeah.
Oh, I know. And we will definitely dive into some conversation about that. But before we do all of that, Michelle, why don't you tell the listeners a little bit more about who Michelle Vandepas is beyond being the publisher, beyond being the speaker and the visibility coach. Let's learn a little bit more about you.
So you, because that's my work. You want to go deep and personal. So I live in the mountains of Colorado Springs with a teenage daughter. I've got a 16-year-old daughter, and yes, I'm an older mom. So some people really resonate with that. Mm-hmm. And my husband, 2 dogs, and 40 goldfish.
Oh.
So
wow, 40 goldfish. Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. And you're in beautiful Colorado Springs. All right. Well, that's a nice place to be right now, I'm sure. And how's the weather holding up over there?
It's hot. So yeah. I'm not a big fan of hot, but it's hot. It was like 92 today, and that was cooler than it was last week. So bring on fall. Yeah. Where are you again?
I'm here and outside of Washington, D.C. metro area in Woodbridge, Virginia.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's hot there, too, because it gets humid, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
It's been pretty crazy. We've had a lot of rain, but, I guess it just comes with the territory, and definitely humidity is our number one problem here in this area. And we've had several weeks and months full of just over 90 degrees weather. So I feel your pain, it's like, can we get through this quickly? But hopefully, with the winter coming and fall coming, it'll settle down everything else that's around us. Because like you said, we have had some craziness going on. We all know the pandemic is, pretty much taken over a lot of everyone's lives. But, we all definitely have seen some successes out of that. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that. Is how has everything been for you with the pandemic and also with some of your clientele?
Yes. So it's so interesting, right? At the beginning, I think all of us were in a little bit of a deer in the headlights shock, right? Mm-hmm. So it's like one day we were going to work and the next day we weren't. One day our kids were at school and the next day they weren't. And so I remember having, all these clients who are writing books, and for like the first 6 weeks, all we did was watch The Tiger King, and, binge Ozark. I watched all the seasons of Ozark, and I rewatched Breaking Bad. Mm-hmm. And here I am. I'm supposed to be a writing coach, right? I'm supposed to say, hey, it's a great time to write. Right. And actually, I think on the planet we were all just collectively holding the exhaustion and bewilderment of what was happening across the whole planet, right?
Right.
But after about 6 weeks, everybody took a collective breath. It felt like Italy started to turn around. It felt like the sun was coming out in different parts of the country. Spring was coming. And then my clients, a lot of them pushed it into gear and started writing again. Mm-hmm. So I like to say, if you didn't write, or you didn't get your book published, or you didn't like clean your closets, or you didn't like work out and lose 20 pounds and get real buff, it's okay.
Right.
Right?
Right.
It's okay.
Right.
But it took a little while. But now I think things work-wise for a lot of people we're starting to get into this new rhythm.
Mm-hmm. Right. And I agree with that. And, it's funny because, I've been talking a lot about this week after week, obviously, because it's just something that's still going on and it is affecting people very differently all over. And, being that I'm an author as well, it's like, okay, I haven't written anything, but I've definitely been helping other people write, and tell their stories and share what they're doing, wanting to self-publish. And it's not because I don't have the juice of like, okay, I have this book and it's been waiting. I've got it started, but I don't want to finish it yet. So
yeah,
I'm not ready to push it out to the world, but it's been an opportunity to encourage as well. Like we were talking earlier about, everybody else, thinking about what they need to do differently, or do they want to be an author, or how do you want to share your story? What is your expertise, or do you want to open a business, whatever that may be, in which a lot of people still don't even bring the two together, that, being an author is a business. And so those are some of the things that I really am excited about talking to you about, and then having you enlighten others about understanding truly what an author is, and how the collaboration of having your expertise come together, and how you push that out of people to make them stand out more than the average. Because nowadays there are thousands and thousands and thousands of authors that we've never heard of, and they're constantly growing, and we may not ever see them. But what do you do differently to help that person shine?
Oh boy, how many hours do we have? We can
go a little longer.
Yeah, so here's the number one thing, right? Okay, so there's several things I want to talk about, but the first number one thing is most authors, whether it's their only book they're ever going to write, or they've written 10 books, this is a wide stroke here, have a real visibility problem. And so what happens is, you are absolutely right. If you want to make money off your book, you're in business. So whether you're writing, and I specialize in nonfiction, but let's say you write romantic historical fiction, and you're going to write, some authors I know write at least one book a year. Some of them pump out more than that. You got to be good at the business. Whether it's signing contracts with your publisher, understanding your royalties, knowing how to market, whatever it is, you got to be good at the business side, right? But especially if you're doing nonfiction, you have to understand how you're going to make that book work for you to be either lead gen, or set yourself up as an expert in your industry, help you go get that TED Talk, whatever it is your next step is. That book is supposed to act as a partner with you to build your business to the next step.
Exactly. And I love what you just said, as a partner. And I think a lot of times when people decide that they want to write a book, they really don't even know how they got there. And I think when I wrote my first book, it was the same scenario. I was like, oh, what am I doing? And I remember having this third party help me self-publish it, but I didn't learn anything. And I actually had to take a step back when I end up doing a second book, which I never thought I would do. And I went through classes. I had to understand, what is it that I was missing, because you don't really understand when you decide that all of a sudden one day you're going to be an author, that there are all these other steps that come with the process. And that's something that people fight against sometimes when they decide that, hey, I want to write a book, I suddenly want to be an author. They don't really understand why they're even doing it, and how it can catapult them up into the next level, and combining that and partnering it with the business, if they have a business. And if they don't have a business, how does it help them personally? What is their purpose behind that? So I guess my question, the question to you is, how do you define that with person? When somebody comes and says to you, hey, I'm an author, I want to write a book, I have this expertise, what can you pull out of them to make them understand how those connections work?
Yeah, great question. So the first thing is, where do you see yourself in 3 years? Where do you see your business going? Do you want to be a speaker? Do you want to do retreats? What is it that you're willing to stick your stake in the sand about and say, this is what I know. This is what I'm here to share. And that becomes the focal point of the book. So I could just give you a couple of examples. Let's say you're a weight loss coach. You might say, number one thing I know everybody needs to do is give up sugar. Or you might say, the number one thing I know everybody needs to do is just start moving their body more. Mm-hmm. Or you might say, you've got to be gluten-free. I mean, there's so many different directions to go, right? Mm-hmm. But you choose one, and then you slowly start building around that core message. So no matter what kind of business you're in, there's one thing that you say to the same thing over and over and over again to every client, to every sales call, to everybody you meet. Here's where you start. That is what the focal point of your book should be. And what I often say is, if you write the conclusion of your book first, you'll really bring into focus what this book is about. So it might be something like, after you've read this book, you're going to understand how giving up sugar is the most important thing you can do for your own health and weight loss. But not only that, you're also going to understand how moving your body and going gluten-free is going to help you feel even better than you ever thought was possible, right? Mm-hmm. I just made that up, right?
Right.
It's just an idea. But when you start with that, you understand sort of the overreaching arc of what this book is about. And that's where people need to start with their nonfiction books.
Wow. And I think that's very interesting that you said that, because I know that as a reader myself, I find myself actually going to the conclusion first, mm-hmm. then going back to read the story. I don't know why, but to me, it's like, okay, I need to know what happened, or how is this going to benefit me and help me before I actually go through the whole book. Even though, I've ordered this book, I think the title may look great. I may look at it, the fact that the cover resonates with that title, all those things, but I really need to start from the back, going backwards and then going forward. So I'm glad that you actually brought that up, because that's something I've never heard anybody else talk about, especially in publishing world, because I think everybody wants to teach the proper steps, but at the same token, being able to see that vision at the end and understanding how it's going to affect somebody else, I think is very brilliant. So that's a very interesting strategy.
Thank you. So there's two things around this too. So the other thing I'm kind of known for in the industry is I tell everybody to write their back cover first.
Okay.
When you write, so pick up some other back covers, read other back covers of books similar to yours, and then go write your back cover, because it does the same thing, but it makes you get even more succinct than the conclusion, right? Mm-hmm. And I want to just swing back around to the visibility thing. People are often scared to just say, I'm the authority on this.
I agree.
Right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
This is what I know, and I know it, and it's true. But I guess I'm going to say maybe if this, then that in the book, right? They're scared to just say what they know. And so what I think separates out the authors that can do really well are the ones that can step into their own authority and knowingness that what they have to say is important and really own it.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
And then
the
rest is editing. Good editing.
Exactly. Right.
Editing,
keyword,
right?
Good editing. Right.
Yeah.
Right. But that's an interesting concept, because you're absolutely right. I think that a lot of times when people suddenly become that author, it's like I said, it's really that connection piece. And when you have an understanding of who you are and you have decided that suddenly, you're writing this book, and then all of a sudden you're out here on this platform. And for me, as a domestic abuse survivor, one of my books are specifically about that. And that's because that's something, unfortunate expertise that I have, that I've had to learn to share with the world in a way that I never thought that I would. And so, and that's the part, I think that's the scarier part. And when you realize what you have sitting in front of you after you've developed this purpose that you've built, and a part of it for me was a healing process. And then once that healing process came through, it was the fact that, oh my gosh, I have something here that the world needs to hear, because I know I can help, if not everybody, at least one person. And I think that's that authority that you have to learn within inside of you, but it does not happen overnight. Even in the process, I have learned, for me personally, writing it, that was not my purpose, originally. So I just think it's interesting, the concepts and how you're pulling just these, even with these questions I'm asking, you're really pulling some things out that most people wouldn't even think about or talk about when they're learning the process of becoming an author. So I also want to ask you, how did you get inspired to do this? What made you, become an author? Were you an author first before you decided to get into the publishing side, or how this all come together?
Yeah, so I've been an entrepreneur and a business consultant almost an entrepreneur my whole life. And then I became a business consultant, and I was helping people learn how to market themselves. And this is 25 years ago, right?
Mm-hmm.
Long time ago, before the internet, before social media.
Right.
How do you market? How do you network? How do you meet people and talk about what you do in a way that other people can hear it, right? Mm-hmm. So I wrote a book about 22 years ago now on marketing for holistic practitioners. That was my first book, and it was a book about how to really market your practice if you're a natural doctor, a massage therapist, an acupuncturist, all those kinds of people, right? So I wrote my book for them. And, I quickly learned that I was not a New York Times bestseller. That my book didn't sell, 50,000 copies right out of the bat, right? And so I had to learn not only how to market businesses, but I suddenly had to learn how to market books. And so as I was learning, I was also teaching all my clients that I had, and in my consulting and my business coaching, how to go write and publish and market your book. And it literally just morphed from there. It really did. It's been a 22-year journey. About 6 years ago, my business partner and I founded the publishing company. And then in the last year, it's just taken off. I was doing other things, she was doing other things, and then we just decided to focus. And it's an amazingly beautiful business we have now. But I can't say it was a decision that I thought of 20 years ago.
Right.
Life gives us twists and turns and shows us our next step.
Right. But I love that, the steps that you've taken and things that you've done, you've definitely showed your purpose. So even though you didn't start out that way, becoming a publishing company, you were taking all those proper steps that you probably, obviously, like I said, didn't even think about. Then here you are now, truly teaching people in a way of saying, hey, you're the expert. Now let me show you how we can pull this out of you to make this work. So, and I love that about it. And that's some of the things that I have definitely learned in the last several years, being in this process and then working with other people who want to become authors and have definitely had, my coaches tell me the same thing when it comes to the publishing side. It's all a very different world here that we're in. But the question I do have is, how do you feel, or what do you feel the differences are between or recommendations to doing self-publishing versus the traditional publishing? Yeah,
great. And there's a third option now too, right? Hybrid publishing.
Yes, that's true.
And I do all three. I work with clients on all three. So I don't think there's one right answer, and nobody likes to hear this. There are times, I talked with an author yesterday who travels the world speaking, maybe not this month, but she's going to get back to that. She will be back to a time where she was 2 years ago, where she traveled the world speaking. Self-publishing is a really interesting option for her because she's going to sell lots of books from the stage, right? She doesn't necessarily need to be a New York Times bestseller. Her vision is to be able to sell her book to the people who hear her speak. So we talked about that option.
Okay.
Some people, I have an author right now that I'm traditionally publishing. So in other words, we actually went after her, solicited her, and then helped her through the publishing contract to finish a manuscript, polish it, and get published. And the reason why we went after her, and this is going to be true for almost every publishing company, is she already has a big following.
Okay.
And so, it's the chicken or the egg, and it's like,
right.
The bigger you are, the less you need a publishing company, but the more you're likely to get one, right?
Right.
A publishing company, just like if you think about a music executive or a director in Hollywood, if they know you're going to bring in some money, bluntly put, if they know you're going to sell books, if they know you're going to sell tickets, if they know you're going to sell music downloads, they're more likely to sign you. Because publishing, just like anything, there's a lot of upfront costs. So, we might spend $5,000, $10,000, $15,000 to get a book ready to publish.
Wow.
And so it takes some money it takes some book sales to get all that back. So we want to work with authors in traditional publishing where we think it's going to resonate with an audience and they have an audience to at least start selling to. Right?
Right.
Authors don't often want to hear that. And
yes.
Right.
Ooh, I know it's the battle in the room. Yes.
Right? But
yes.
but here's the thing. It goes back to that visibility issue. If you're an author, if you're someone who says, well, I'm just going to use the weight loss example again. I'm a weight loss coach. I know I've got a message. I know I have an interesting spin. I want to write my book. Well, you better start talking about that on social media now. You better start building an email list now and getting the word out now about your ideas, testing them with your potential audience, finessing your words, understanding what resonates so that you can go get a good deal with a publisher, or if you self-publish or hybrid publish, you have an audience ready to buy. Right? So we're back to you got to be willing to sort of stand up and stand behind what you think. The third option is hybrid, and we work a lot with this option where we will work with an author through book coaching, book editing, and then marketing your book. We don't charge for actual publishing. But if you work with us in one of our book coaches, we're guaranteed to take your book in one of our presses because we know you've been through the process to get a polished manuscript. Then we will publish, we'll lay out, design, we'll work with you on book covers, all of that. We'll publish, it'll go through Library of Congress, it'll have all the ISBN numbers, get through distribution, and then we work together to market it. Right? So that's a pretty common model these days, but there's so many publishing companies all around the place. Some have really good editors, some don't. Some will work with you on covers. Some just give you a pre-made cover. So as with anything and everything, if you're buying a product, ask all the right questions.
Very good point. Yeah, that's usually, and I think that's the lesson that people absolutely learn, especially if they're doing it the first time, because some people obviously believe they can do it themselves because there's a ton of information out there, and you can pull it up on free on Google and all that, but it's understanding the process itself. And that's where most people make their mistakes, is that they truly don't understand the process. And so, when it comes time to have to go back and talk to that publisher or talk to that book coach, then that's when the aha moments come out, because they realize, well, if I'd have done it this way, then I would be in a much better position. But I love how, we as book coaches and the people who are authors, you do have options there. And that's something that, you definitely have to talk about. And the first option I have found for most of my clients is the most prevalent for them, simply because they don't have that audience, but they have this great idea. They know what it is that they're trying to convey, and that is always the number one thing that I found that it works better for them. But with the new hybrid stuff, you're right, that's becoming the new thing. Most people are saying, hey, I only want this or I only want that, and that's perfectly fine. But I absolutely think that people need to go through and really truly understand, like I said, answer good questions or either take a course and really understand what it means to be an author and how this all comes together. It's really not just about writing the story anymore.
Yeah, and the piece I want to say about that is if you self-publish, because I do this and I think you do this as well, you got to work with someone who's been through the process, because there are some things that you could write a beautiful book and it won't sell more than 100 copies, and there are ways to fix that, right? You got to have a really super great cover. Do not use the cover that your mother tells you is beautiful.
Or the one you drew, right?
right. And you've got to use the cover that's going to resonate with your potential readers, right? We don't care what your best friend thinks.
That's right.
So you got to go into business mind around this. There's a few things that can make a huge difference. So cover's one of them. Really great editing's one of them. A really good book description is one of them. So it's all the marketing pieces.
Absolutely.
It's the same reason some restaurants make it and others don't. You got to have good, good face on the street. It's got to look inviting.
Absolutely. And that's no different than the food. If you may have a great name, but then you get inside and it's like, oh, this is what I want to order, but when you get the actual food, it doesn't look like that picture. So if it's not inviting, you're obviously not going to continue to get that same customer. So it's the same concept when it comes to being an author. And you're absolutely right, that most people listen to what everybody else is saying instead of really understanding this is how this works. And that's the number one thing I talk about, even in the coaching and the training that I do, is that how important it is to understand the marketing. That's the hardest part. To me, that's always been the biggest part that people don't understand, especially when they don't understand business. So then it's like you're flipping in, and having to get them to realize what business means. And especially if they're going to take it very seriously about being a true entrepreneur and being a true author, and especially if they're tying it with the expertise that they say that they have. So, you're definitely, of course, you are the expert. I'm like, hey, right here learning and continuing to learn and teach. But this conversation is just so exciting for me because, I definitely know a lot of publishing, companies and other authors, but to be able to break it down, to really make people understand, especially in this time and arena and kind of the era that we're in, that, like we said earlier, there are people who are taking that time to sit down and think about, well, what do I want to write, or how do I want to write this, and what are the steps I need to take? So you guys tonight, I want you all listeners to know you are getting some very good free golden nuggets tonight. Okay, you have this amazing woman, Michelle Vandepas, who has been doing this for over 20-some years, and you got me, who's only been doing this for 4 or 5 years, but the language is the same, and that's the key, is that when you do understand what it means to be an author and the steps that it takes, then, it doesn't matter how many years you have, but it's just understanding truly the process of it. And, I've just been excited to have, like I said, this opportunity to talk to you tonight, but obviously I've got a couple more questions before we go.
Yeah.
But the question I have is that, okay, I know you get this all the time because I get it. Is how do you become an author? So what great advice would you tell this person when they ask you that question?
This is going to sound so freaking stupid, right? Okay, quit reading books about writing and sit down and write.
Yay!
So you want to be a marathon runner? Get up off of the couch. Quit looking at all the marathons on TV and get up off the couch. You want to learn how to drive a car? Go take a lesson, right? You want to learn how to act? Go audition. Take a lesson. So the only way to become an author is to write.
There you go.
You can, and let me say, am I allowed to say, you're allowed to write crap. Am I allowed to say that? You can really write like really, really bad stuff. That's okay. We don't care. You just got to write. Just got to get the words on the paper.
Exactly. And then everything else can be fixed. And that is the key.
It can all be fixed. Yep.
Exactly.
You got it.
Yes, I love it from somebody finally just told the truth. Besides me. Oh, this has been great. And Michelle, like I said, it's been such a pleasure having you on. Before you go, could you please tell everybody how they can reach you, and if they're interested, and if you have anything going on new, please share it with us tonight.
Yeah, thank you. So I'm at GracePointPublishing.com. So GracePoint Publishing. I've got a great download there that people can get that tells you the 10 things you must know before you hit that publish button. Talks about things like ISBNs and fonts and book covers. So go grab that free download. And I'm happy to talk with anybody about publishing. So you got an idea or you want to call me, pick up the phone and call me, or send me an email. Love to talk to you.
All right. Well, you guys have heard it live. I mean, like I said, this has been a fantastic, opportunity to talk with you. And thank you again for sharing your story, your vision, and how you got there, and what you're doing to help others. Because, like you said, just being an author, you just got to write. The rest of it, we will get you there. And, you've got absolutely some amazing experience. And I appreciate your time coming on and spending it with me and my listeners this evening. So I hope you all listeners have learned something valuable this evening about what it really means to be an author and how you can share your expertise with the world. And as far as everything else, Michelle, I just again want to say thank you. Do you have any last words before I close and shut everything down?
You have a vision to write a book someday? Just start flushing out some thoughts on paper. That's how it starts.
All right. And again, I would like to say thank you all for listening to me this evening. We're here every Thursday evening at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. And you can follow us anytime on iHeartRadio, Spotify, and I'm on 12 other new platforms, as well as we have a new mobile app that you can download from Google Play to listen to any show anytime, anywhere at your own convenience. And also go to our website at www.sbilc.com and also learn about what we have coming. We have some new master classes for self-publishing, and also I have a new item coming out where I'll be doing some virtual live question and answer sessions about, do you really want to be an author? So be looking out for that. I'm looking for 10 people that would be interested in having that question answer session with me coming soon. So again, like I say, if you have any questions or you want to learn more about what I do and what we do here at WSBI, just go to www.wsbillc.com. Again, you all have a wonderful evening, and we'll see you soon. Good night.
Good night, everyone. We will be back next Thursday evening at 7 p.m. Follow us on Spreaker, www.spreaker.com/user/WSBI. View our new WSBI website anytime at www.wsbillc.com and on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, LinkedIn, and Instagram.